Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Parm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Crown and Passion 7. Hello, and welcome to another show. Today, we have a very special guest, Pietro from the Limited Edition. Welcome, Pietro.
Thank you, Parm. Very nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for joining us. So what we normally do is a quick wristwatch check at the beginning of the show. As you're our guest, what have you got on the wrist there, Pietro?
So today I have one of the pieces that were at the very early times of my involvement with independent watchmaking, and it's Sartori Billard. It was a special edition made for our friend Hammer from the Horrorphile, and it's got this really cool titanium dial that has been heated. It's titanium heated, actually. Sartori Billard started on the SP04 at the beginning, playing with this incredible craft with these dials that were created in different colors and different variations. I was lucky enough to obtain a family and friends piece. As you can notice, also the case is in titanium as well. So a little piece that has accompanied me in the little journey we've been through with the limited edition, and that I'm really attached to.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Well, that's a really nice piece. Yeah. Andy, surprise us.
Oh, well, I don't think I can up that piece, but I'm wearing a very special piece for myself, more sentimental than anything else. So when I tend to do anything special, like this interview, I like to wear a watch what's special to me, which is my granddad's Vertex. So it's a brand from London, Swiss made. And this was given to him for 25 years of work at a metal factory in Leeds, so from where I'm originally from. So to me, it's a very special little piece, and yeah, it just gives me great joy with that connection to my grandfather when I wear this piece. So yeah, that's what I'm rocking.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. So me, I'm being boring again. So I'm doing my Explorer January. This is my sacrifice to myself to see if I can control myself and only wear one watch for the whole of January. So I've got my Rolex Explorer 39mm 214270, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, really.
It's your own version of the dry January. Yeah, you're containing yourself there.
Yes, exactly. I thought, well, the dry January, forget. Okay. So, because this probably seems like a bigger addiction now is watches and stuff. So,
what does a Rolex Explorer represent to you, Palm? A beginning or an achievement in your collection?
So this was a gift from my wife. So it's a very special one. It will never leave the collection. It was for a milestone birthday. But also, I think January in London and in the UK, so Pietro is based in the UK, after the chaos of Christmas, it's quite a dull month. It's all downtime. And I think this just suits that mood perfectly. It's a simple watch, black dial, steel. It's not too much. It's not too little. Yeah. It's just
iconic, right, iconic, legendary, but not in your face.
Exactly.
Yeah. But there's something wrong, with this dry January situation and sad January in general, because people ask me, are you doing dry January? I say, no, listen, I don't have a problem with drinking. So I'm living January. I'm still living January. It's 1/12 of my full year. I want to enjoy it. So, no, sorry.
Yeah. But I think it's Christmas. Some people at Christmas, maybe they and New Year's, they probably overindulge.
Of course.
So it's for those guys. So yeah, I'll overindulge in changing my watches. So there's mine.
We're all guilty. We're all guilty of that.
Yeah, well guilty of that.
Yeah. So Pietro, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself and the listeners.
Oh, it could be a long story, so I'll try to keep it nice and sharp and short. I've been 25 years nearly in the watch industry. I came to the watch industry by mistake, just because I was in Milan in 2001 and I could speak a couple of languages, and it was a bit of a feature to have that skill in those days. So Richmond Group hired me to take care of a very small brand at the time, Montegrappa pens, and then we collaborated with Cartier first and with Montblanc then. And as a young manager, I learned a lot in those years. It was a school. And you can imagine also the Cartier method and protocol compared to the Montblanc. There were two different worlds within the same group. So I believe I learned two different schools of running business in so many ways. But then I found out that my idea of development was not linked to a career eventually, but it was linked on trying to leave a mark with independence. So I joined an independent watchmaker, Girard-Perregaux, in 2007. I had 3 fantastic years over there, but they were unfortunately polluted by the big financial hit that happened in 2008. So I thought initially I'll stay there for the rest of my life. It didn't quite pan out as such. And also because I got married to an English woman and I decided to move from Switzerland to the UK 13 years ago. And once in the UK, after collaborating with Graham Watches, where I learned a lot in terms of managing a smaller, with all respect, of course, for Graham, but a smaller endeavor, I had an opportunity through a friend who decided to, in the years where promotion on the internet of watches was only related to finding a bargain, finding a discount, trying to dig deep to get whatever you would see in a shop cheaper, we decided to try to switch that mentality. And we said, why don't we go use the internet actually to explain watches, to create content, to entice and to entertain crazy people like us that think and feel watches on a daily basis, rather than buying media such as newspapers or magazines that obviously were selling advertising, so they had a limited amount of neutrality when it came to talking about watches. So we said, but how are we gonna make that a profitable business? And we said, well, if we become a retailer as well as a medium, then maybe there's something we can do here. We create education, we create the culture around artisan watchmaking, because I knew full well there were many collectors around the world so passionate about artisan watchmaking. We can delve more into that later on if you like. But so we found, when you start as a business or an adventure like your podcast, you have a rough idea of where you want to go, but then, you kind of navigate and find your own business model as you get along. So today we started from 4 brands as official retailers, and we have now more than 60. The idea is to try to give that neutrality I was talking about before. And the idea is to support these unknown artisan watchmakers in the process of reaching out to nice collectors that can be interested and eventually purchase their watches. So I'll stop here because I could talk for ages, but I hope this gives an idea.
No, thank you. That was a nice little summary there.
The first question I'd like to ask really is, what made you focus on independence? What is it about independence for you? What made you think, hey, these brands need this spotlight, they need this attention? So what made you, because as a retailer, you could take on like mainstream brands as well. So what made you choose that independent route?
Yeah, it was scary at the beginning because we thought, like many retailers most of retailers, they do a bit of the independents and they do mainly the mainstream brands to be able to support and to finance the business in the long run. But then with the independents, you have that kind of add-on that allows you to stand out a little bit from any other retailer. So that's how normally a retailer would operate. For us, it was different. Like, we were so small when we started. We started with a very small investment, and it was just me in my room at the beginning. Now we have 15 people in the company, and we turn over, a good amount of dollars. But at the beginning, the big question was, from the business perspective, how are we going to stand out? Because I knew all the retailers out there, as I knew all the brands for being a veteran in the industry. And I didn't want to just replicate what others were trying to do. So I said, what can we do that has not been done yet? And this was mine before even Hodinkee or other platforms became kind of retailers as well. So in those days, there was either brick and mortar retailers or blogs, but there wasn't a hybrid, which was what I thought we should do. Also, functionally, very importantly, it was not just from the marketing perspective, but functionally, I had learned in my career that the big problem with watchmaking is when, in order to fill out all the retailers around the world, brands would entertain huge productions or productions that are over the demand of the market. And these in cycles would actually end up polluting the perceived and the real value of those brands. So I said, can I turn that fundamental logic upside down? And can I see, very humbly, if I can create the demand before, gauge the demand, and then ask these artisans to just produce comparatively to the demand, would that not be more efficient? And the answer was yes. Then from the personal perspective, I've always been into music, into art, and I've always been chasing for what is different. I like what is different. I come across as very conventional and very corporate at times, but in music, I'm very much into niche music. Art, I'm very much into niche art. And in watchmaking, for me, it's a form of art. So I wanted to find the underdogs and underground watchmakers that we would have given a voice to. And by doing that, instantly, we would have been different to what was out there already. So I didn't want to have a life where my existence would have been depending on how much discount I could give more on a Rolex or on a Patek or on a Vacheron Constantin. I wanted to give real value, and that was my intuition at the beginning.
Well, yeah.
I can I
Spirit,
can
yeah.
also add, I'm just thinking about your question. Why the independence? So I explain how I did it, but not the fundamental why. For me, the anachronistic art of watchmaking is related to our attachment to the ancestral values of human skills and human crafts. I have worked for brands. Brands are brands. They want to grow. They want to produce as much as they can possibly sell, with the only exception when they have to create the perception of oversubscription. Then they would limit their production. But their idea is to grow, 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 and to be in
Yeah.
the four corners of the world with a full assortment in all the important retailers worldwide. So when I was in Richmond, that was the strategy. But why do we fundamentally love watchmaking? Because it's an ancestral form of art that has no logic today other than just loving what humans can conceive and can create. And if this is true, which I think it is, then the future of watchmaking is solidly linked to the development of the current and future artisans that populate this form of art.
Well, quite deep there, artistic. Well, Pietro being from Italy, of course, from Milan, right? Obviously we can expect
Yeah.
answers like that.
I'm one of those people that when you ask a question, I'm gonna go and give you the honest answer. I have a problem when people ask me, "How are you?" I carry on for ages.
It's brilliant. No, it's an insightful answer. And I couldn't agree more. I know Palm's the same as well. Just independents are the future brands of tomorrow, right? They are the brands who we need to support. They're the ones taking risks and bringing new innovations, to the watch industry. And yeah, the same. We're definitely loving independence right now as well.
Yeah, they've always inspired the big brands as well, which is that was something that's always happened.
Yeah, it's like fashion, I guess. The real haute couture is what influences the mainstream. Just a question, something I picked up on what you said when you said previously you had newspapers and magazines and they were limited with adverts, limited to the message they could deliver with adverts. Is that what led to the name of your brand, Limited Edition? Because that sounds kind of similar. Is that what inspired that?
So the limited edition came about because at the beginning, the initial idea was to try to retail only watches that were limited editions, because it's a concept that resonates to any collector around the world. And if you want to create an e-commerce, we found that was possibly the best name. And today it really works because it indirectly gives the idea of something that is rare. It's not easy to find. It requires a certain understanding, a certain knowledge, and a certain time to cultivate in acquiring the knowledge. So yeah, that's it. There wasn't too
Okay.
much thinking.
I'm thinking too much about it, am I? I'm going too deep into it.
No. I I'm really happy because 10 years down the line, I still love the name. And when you start a business, you may start with Pietro's
Yeah.
watches or some
Chrono
silly.
Passion 7.
Luckily we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Chrono Passion, you couldn't get wrong with Chrono Passion, to be honest.
But the events that you put on, I've been to two. They've been excellent, and I'm going to one pretty soon as well in the future. So what you're doing is it's great stuff. And just following on from that, for our listeners who only think of mainstream watches and more generic watches, we did a couple of shows ago on independent brands. What would you say to our listeners who are toying with the idea of moving towards the independence and can't quite make that jump? What would you say to them to inspire them to make that shift?
I'd say, because in numbers, the independents are so limited. So the only luck that we have is like in contemporary art, again, you have students coming out of the universities around the world that are potentially new artists for the future. The same is happening with independents, especially now because of the success they've had. But they will always be scarce and they will always be limited in the production they can offer. So it's actually quite good that not everybody is into the independence in that sense. Yeah. So I think, there is a say when something is hell yes, then go for it. But if it's not a hell yes, let's just take your time. I would say if the stories are behind the independence are not enticing you, they don't interest you, then it's a sign of the fact that maybe that category is not for you. But I find now in nearly 10 years of activity with the limited edition, we find that inevitably most collectors start from one or the other mainstream brand. And obviously there are some amazing one out there. We all had these watches in our collection. And that's where you start the learning experience. And learning is not in a patronizing way, but as a natural way of having a journey towards something else. And then if you are actually infected by the bug, by the watchmaking bug, you can't help not digging around the independents, because why is even a Rolex a fantastic watch? Why is Jaeger LeCoultre a fantastic watch? Why is an IWC an interesting watch? They all come from artisan independent watchmaking, and some of them are still independent. Rolex, for as big as it is still an independent brand. So then as you develop that knowledge and you go deeper, you will stumble into them. You'll go into Harry Whiston, you'll discover about the Opus saga. You go into Jaeger LeCoultre, you discover about the collaboration with Eric Coudray. You go into Van Cleef and you discover that they've been collaborating with Christian van der Klauw for a number of years on their planetariums. So then if it stops there, it stops there and it's fine. But if you start digging, also, who's Christian van der Klauw? Christian van der Klauw is the most important independent watchmaker for astronomical complications. And then you look at your watch, there is a Van Cleef, and you go like, oh yeah, this is amazing, but let me check out more about van der Klauw. And then that's how it goes. So I don't have a tip or an advice. I always just say, if you have a passion for the independents, just read their stories. Sometimes they are compelling, fascinating, very charming, and the fun is incredible, because then you go to the events that you just mentioned, Parm.
Yep.
Maybe
Limited
our
edition
small
events.
events, or it could be the main shows in the industry in Geneva, Dubai, etc. And this, you can talk to these people. You're not going to talk to a sales manager when you show up there. You talk to the people and they will tell you exactly why they became artists, exactly why they don't care about timelines, schedules. They just do what they like and they do it at their own pace. And then you'll start understanding that it's not very important anymore staying up at night waiting for that big brand to drop this or the other limited edition, because you have another story that gives you equal pleasure that you can follow in your own time. I always say the pleasure of watchmaking is not when you buy a watch. There are hours and hours and hours of research before, where you're actually equally enjoying on YouTube in your room, in your office, when you're waiting to have your dinner, or at night, when you chill. And that's part of the passion. And independence can give you a lot of emotion on that side, even before you purchase any of their watches.
Okay, well, that's a nice neutral answer there as well. So, yeah, of course, if you like independence, go for it. If not, it's just because I find myself sometimes it's, do I go here or do I go there? And that's a good way. If you like the story of the brand, that's and again, meeting the people who run the brands is always a great thing, because you hear a lot more, like you say, a lot more insight from them than the marketing managers.
Exactly. You can't have everything, as a collector. Direction in a collection is an important thing. And being independent has become an interesting category. But within independence, there may be some that you really like, some that you really detest, some that inspire you, some that don't really do anything to you. So it's then more complex than that. And it's only by digging deep that then you'll be able to actually make the right decisions, especially when a sizable amount of money are involved.
I think that's certainly true. Like, it leads into the next segment quite perfectly. So 2 episodes ago, me and Palm did the dive into 3 different independents each. And as you say, just doing that homework, that research, like Sven Anderson, for example, I fell in love with that brand just by reading the history of the brand and understanding how it began and the amazing achievements he's had through that journey. So definitely, I think that is good advice what you gave. So if you're not sure about independence, just start geeking out on them. That's the only way you start to really appreciate what they're doing, right?
Absolutely. It's like in music. Do you remember the old school record shops? You go there and you'll find the usual stuff, and then you'll have to do your homework at home to find stuff that may relate to you more. You mentioned one of the most iconic watchmakers of our time. It's just got the GPHG award as a tribute, and I was lucky enough to be in the jury there. So double satisfaction for us. Sven is part of the wave of first pioneering independent watchmakers. The wave that has gone, I wouldn't say unnoticed, but nearly unnoticed compared to what's happening now. Then the second wave was more the Max Busser, the Felix Baumgartner with Urwerk, for example, then later on De Bethune, Moser. But Sven, in 1984 starts the AHCI with Vincent Calabrese and gives really a platform for independence to actually exist beside just going to the bigger watchmakers and work for them. Laurent Ferrier, Sven Andersen, of course, he was a Patek Philippe for many years, and he actually implemented the world time at Patek Philippe, which is obviously based on the studies of Cotin. But so again, by linking all these dots, when you finally see one of the pieces, you see the piece, but the piece has a body and has a spirit, and that's given by the achievements and the journey of the person, behind. And especially when it's not somebody that's lived maybe 200 years ago, 300 years ago, which you'll never meet in the end.
Totally. So for this segment, we were going to ask you what you thought of some of our picks. So one of mine being
Okay,
Sven
so
Andersen.
I've given Sven Andersen. That's done. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You couldn't have summed it up any better. So that's a great answer. So Parm, what's one of your picks you'd like to put forward?
One, I mean, we did 3 price categories, and I think Sven was the sky's the limit category that Andy picked. So my one was Ludwig Ballois with the upside down watch.
Ooh.
And his story
Yeah.
as well. Again, when you read about what they've done, a misconception with some people is that a lot of there are some independent brands are opened by an entrepreneur who was in finance. You do hear that story, and they loved watches and they wanted to create a watch brand. And I thought Ludwig Ballois was one of those, but no, he has a great story as well. So what are your views on that brand?
Ludovic is part of that Genevan community of independents that have been active before the beginning of this century. And in his own right, he's been responsible for incredible achievements when he was a Frank Muller, which was crazy successful in those years. And he was the head of the high complications of Frank Muller. So he made the first highly ultra complicated mechanisms for Frank Muller. And then he moved to F. Pigeon. So that of a bit of a pedigree there. And then at one point, F. Pigeon as well, he was working on the highly complicated pieces, and then he decided to go solo early as well, quite early. I would say we did the second wave of independence. So at the same time as Max was conceiving MB&F, 2005, 6, 7. And then Ludovic is just a splendid human being, as often these people are. So approachable, so easy to talk to, so non-business driven. They're all selling, obviously, their watches, but like you can spend hours with somebody like Ludovic and just learn and learn and learn. And it's just that is an experience. Ludovic is one of my favorites. So the Upside Down for me was one of the watches that represents what we do in such a great way. And this concept of enjoying your present, forgetting, being the future and the past completely immaterial. The watch only shows you the present time, doesn't show you
the present hour. Else. Yeah. So, and it was the financial crash. He was saying, live in the moment, live in the hour that you're in. There's 23 others that are either gone or going to come, and you have no real influence on them.
Yeah, and it's somebody may say, it's easy for you. You're selling a watch. It's £100,000, so of course you're gonna have a philosophy like that. But it wasn't always like that. He really started from scratch, and his idea of often is independent solo watchmakers. Then we'll talk about the brands later if you want, because there's a big distinction between independent brands. Actually, if you go on the limited edition website, that's how we curate our collection. Independent brands and the contemporary watchmakers, 2 different categories. Then we have the micro brands.
Yeah, we'll drop a link in the notes for the limited edition website. But sorry, Pietro, you carry on, please.
No, so Ludo started from nothing, and he was he was in France as a boy, getting used to mechanics, not applied to watches, but he ended up working in an airport in France, and then decided to risk it all. And as I said, Frank Muller, then F. Pigeon. So he was at a good point of his career. Imagine staying at F. Pigeon as a master watchmaker would have been fairly, not a bad
comfortable
thing.
life.
But he decided. He started to start it all again. And I remember, like at the limited edition, 15 years ago, these objects were not easy to sell. Now we're living a completely different time. Why? Because the knowledge is there, people are interested, and so there is a market. But when these people started, it was pure art.
Yep, it's a Maltese cross movement. I tried to explain the watches because some of these I had was so complicated, and in an audio format, it was almost impossible. But anyway, I gave it a go, and it was probably quite amusing to some people. But no, it was a quick one. Frank Muller was known as the master of complications. I mean, I've only got into watches over the last 5 years properly. I've always been to an appreciation of watches, and what I see of Frank Muller isn't that complicated anymore. It's more the crazy hours and the tonneau case shape. To me, that's more the iconic vision that comes into my mind when I think of Frank Muller. So when Ludovic was there, was he one of the reasons why Frank Muller was considered the master of complications?
Oh, 100%. 100%. He's basically, for how I understand it, you should ask maybe Ludovic if one day you managed to have him. But for how I understand it, I interviewed him a few times. Yeah, he was basically trusted to set up the Grand Complication workshop by Frank Müller, and he came out with some of the most incredible pieces, combining tourbillons, minute repeaters, etc., etc. So, but I don't know strategically if then it was what Frank Müller was thinking in those days and where they ended up. Like you, I feel it's more of a lifestyle kind of proposition compared to where they maybe were 20 years ago. But I may be slightly wrong with that. But Frank Müller is huge in the country I'm from, in Italy.
Okay, stylish though, right? It's all about the style, I guess.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, they have played with some incredible complications across the years, but there is a difference of what you do and the perception that you have on the market to collectors. So collectors, if they're thinking complex timepieces and complicated timepieces, maybe Frank Müller is today not the first choice, but it's been a great brand and surely doing still great things. But they touched their prime at the end of the last century, really, before Hublot took over
Okay,
from them in so many ways.
That was my high-end choice. So, okay, it seems like it was quite a good choice. Yeah.
And it sounds like it.
Oh, God. Spot on for both of you as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
And then everything's
Let's see if
subjective.
we can,
winners
yeah,
there.
we see if we can maintain it. So if we're going like more middle lane price points, I say middle lane, it's not really. It's like between, what was it again? It was between 5 to 20.
15,000, 5 to 15, I think it was. Was it 15? Yeah, I think 5 to 20. Sorry,
5
to 20,000 was our middle tier. Yeah.
Like petite aiguille territory.
So the brand I chose was Lane Watches, Touristi Lane. And I really like, for example, the V8 Guilloche. I think it's absolutely a work of art. And yeah, just interested to know your opinion on Lane. And I'm not sure, is it a brand you stock at the moment?
So I can give you a story there. It's one of the first brands I contacted when I set up the limited edition, but I think Thirsty was already oversubscribed in those days. He had too much work. He said, listen, we can talk about it next year. And then it never quite happened. But yeah, it was when I was considering, Sartori BR and Ophion watches, etc. I looked closely at the work of Lane, and definitely respect them. I think, especially in those years, the value they were offering for the price positioning was really exceptional. Now, I know that like many other independents, they have crept a little bit higher in pricing, also adding more value to what they are proposing. But I remember in those years, it was like a bit of a no-brainer, for starting in the journey with the independents.
Yeah, definitely. I think a great brand, right? And I think his background was with Carl Wilterleinen, right? So that's apparent when you see the dial. Like the finishing on the dials for me is what really does it. And just for the customization you can have on those pieces. Like you can choose different types of guilloche per segment, and even on the back, if you go into the manual wind, you can have it. You choose a gold base plate or yellow gold, rose gold. Yeah, it's crazy, right? The level of detail.
That's a big point of. It's a big weakness for the mass-produced brands or this traditional luxury brands that they had to forget about customization, personalization altogether, which is understandable from a business model perspective from their point of view, but it goes against what is the nature actually of artisan watchmaking and the fact that these solo artists, you just mentioned Thirsty, but I can mention, Ludovic, so many others, they actually thrive on customization. They like to hear your voice and to hear my voice, when we talk on behalf of collectors and discussing, because it helps sometimes to actually raise raise the bar is a bit of a cliche, but like take some risks that maybe they would have not thought of taking, and it helps their creative process. Same reason why it really helps me talking to collectors on a daily basis, because I find out things that I didn't know every single day, and I learn every day. So I think it's a bit of a similar process.
Yeah.
So what was Parm's second choice then?
Okay, so my second one, this was the one that really got me not confused. I knew how it worked, but to try and explain, it was the first event I saw you at. It was Trilobe, and the two pieces I picked were the Nuit Fantastique and Un Vol
Yeah.
Journée. You can imagine how hard those were to describe, how they actually work in an audio format. But I remember seeing them as well at the show, and I just found them absolutely fascinating. Just the whole concept of not wanting to use hands, wanting to do something different. That's, for me, again, the beauty of independent brands is you can be different.
Yeah.
You can dare to be different without targets plummeting. The guys in the boardroom with their flip chart
Yeah.
saying, the targets have dropped. These guys can do what they want. And it's such a great ethos to have.
That's exactly it. And with Trilob, we had a great spell, and we were lucky enough to find them at the right time when they were really just being noticed. They were definitely on the rise, and we've had, I think it's been 3 years now, very, very good collaboration. And yeah, it's an interesting one. People are actually arguing, if you're not into watchmaking, you're actually arguing why the hell you need a watch in the first place, let alone a watch that shows the time in a strange, awkward way. But that's what we feed off, on a regular basis.
That's the beauty of it.
Is
That's what catches our eye.
and to keep going with the art comparison is like a dial is like a white canvas where once you accept and and you are informed and passionate about the artist tries to achieve, then the dial is this canvas, to try to even showcase such an important thing as the time in an awkward way or in an odd, unexpected way. And because we get it, we like it. But I totally get the ones that don't get this kind of exercise. But it's fascinating.
It's really interesting what you say about, because you referencing the dial being the canvas, if you like. We did an interview back at Geneva Watch Days with Fabrizio from Bulgari, and he said exactly the same thing. Like, it's my canvas, it's where I put my art to.
Oh gosh!
So you've literally the same. Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah.
He actually said, what he actually said is, I want to do a watch with no hands. I just want it's the beautiful thing on your wrist that's really the attraction, not the time.
Bulgari, of course, besides the Italian background, common Italian background, is a brand that we don't treat, but I have plenty of respect for what they've done. I was very, very skeptical when they decided to acquire Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth. I thought that was the end of those two names, to be honest, because I used to come from a big group and I know how certain things can go in a way. So that I was doubting there would be the time to really give light again to these illustrious names. But the work they've done has been honestly quite incredible. And even now within the LVMH group, when you would think that some of the big group protocols would apply at the end, but they are keeping an eye very much open on giving both Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth what they deserve for the legacy that they have on our market. So I only have big respect for what they've done.
It's art. There's a big Roman presence to that as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I can give you a tip. Internationally, everyone says Bulgari. It's actually Bulgari. You can
Bulgari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the nice one. I think you did. No, I
need
think
that
you said it
help,
in the correct way, Andy. So I can, yeah.
Oh, great. I'm the worst. I'm famous for being terrible
And
at
yet French.
pronunciation, so I'm not
No,
going
the
to say it
Italian
again.
seems quite good then. Yeah, the French is bad, but Italian is not too
French
bad.
is
then.
not easy.
It's okay. Right. Okay. So our entry level tier was up to £5,000 or whichever currency we were talking in. And Andy, do you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, like I'll be honest, the one which I chose, I'm not sure if you'll know the brand, and I'm not sure if they quite fit into independent or micro. It's just that I have a respect for that particular brand, being that it's a Spanish brand, and the brand is Creppers, and they do some really cool dive watches, which are inspired by, maybe the best way to describe it, it's like some dive watches which were created by like Amiga, which were prototypes, which never quite made it into final production. And then what Creppers does is discovers these watches and then makes them a functional diver for a limited run. So it's kind of bringing life back to watches what never really quite made it for collectors to have, who would have really loved those pieces. So I just thought they deserved a little bit of love, but I don't know. It's not the most well-known brand, so I'm not sure if you know Creppers.
Oh, listen, did I already mention that I learn every time that I have an exchange, in watchmaking? So this is one case where it's a brand I haven't heard, but it sounds interesting what you're saying here. So I'll definitely go and have a look. Also because we were on the lookout for a diving watch brand, because diving watches and watchmaking are a difficult combination. Mechanical watchmaking are a difficult combination because you never can see the movement really on a diving watch. So we recently integrated on our platform Atelier Olger, which is a beautifully looking diving watch with an open case back and still being a proper diving instrument, so resistant to pressure and all of those requirements that you need when diving. But I'll definitely, if you send me the details, I'll go and have a look.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. No, but I can definitely say they are built like tanks and they're extremely accessible for collectors. So yeah, it's definitely an attractive entry level diver, I would say, but with some great connections to the past and history. So yeah, I'll share the
yeah,
details though.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, excellent. And my one was it's one I'm sure you know of. It's Louis Erard.
I've heard of them.
So yeah, you're familiar with them, right? So I picked the malachite, the Excellence malachite, which I think was amazing value, especially at that price point, and also the Chaikin watch they did.
Time Eater.
That's it, the time eater. Those two were my. I mean, for under £5,000 to get a well, I suppose they must go quite quickly now. I'm guessing any collaboration with Chaikin or Chaikin himself, his watches must go very rapidly. But both of those, I just thought were incredible value and so unique.
Yeah, that's what really Manuel Emch is working really well on. With Louis Erard, they have consolidated the mechanical part by a healthy and good collaboration with Selita. And then once that was done early on, they decided to try to interpret some of the most important crafts in the world of watchmaking by keeping the prices under check. So to be able to offer, I would say, accessible watchmaking with some of the artistic crafts, and they spice it up every now and then with a crazy collaboration. I won't take any credit for it, but we've been the most, I think, proficuous Chaikin retailer since 2017, up to the time obviously of when this conflict started in Ukraine, and there are some restrictions unfortunately, but the idea of linking Louis Erard and Chaikin could have come from somewhere near us. It was only a logical thing to suggest, and I'm happy that they got together, came out with these two editions. So yeah, two versions that came out. The first edition is completely sold out. The second was also sold out, but I give you a little surprise for our podcast. I think we sold something like a dozen of the Time Eater 2, but a couple of collectors, unfortunately, they couldn't honor their commitment on the watches because their circumstances have changed in the meantime. So I think we have one or two Louis Erard Time Eater 2 actually still available. And if anyone is interested, you can go on the stock part of our website. You'll see there basically. So, but they're brand new. So it's quite a bit of an opportunity there.
Well, that's excellent news. But by the time we drop this show, hopefully they're not gone. They may be. So give it a go. Check out the limited edition website. And if they're on there, good luck, and I hope you get one. Pietro, so your collaboration with Chaikin, I remember speaking to you the first time I met you, and you said you were the first company in the UK to stock Chaikin watches?
Yeah, 100%. I think we still are. I mean, we still are not because of the
Yeah,
war
yeah.
situation. But no, we were the first altogether to talk about Chaikin. Really, I think in the very early days there was also the Lavish Attic in Hong Kong and very few others. I remember at the beginning, it took a while to explain that actually Chaikin is one of the most important masters of watchmaking that are actually alive. And the Joker was a very fun watch that to some people didn't convey that idea necessarily. It conveyed more the fun of the layout, and the sarcasm of telling the time in
The
such a way.
tongue-in-cheek look at timekeeping, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but Constantine is an absolute genius. So when we started the limited edition, Constantine was one of the 4 starting brands on the limited edition.
Wow, very impressive.
So that maybe leads to probably my final question, just due to the time. And I think this is nice for our listeners, coming from your expertise. So I'd like to ask, it's kind of a double question. So the first part of the question would be, which are your favorite brands right now in 2024? So which really resonate with you? And then the second part of this question is, which smaller little independents, who are just maybe coming onto the scene or starting to gain traction, are starting to get a bit of your attention, like you're keeping a close eye on? Is there any like tips you can give our listeners, like, hey, check what these guys are doing? You're going to want to, in a few years' time, they could be
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I can follow the same scenario you have been following, the 3 three tiers actually kind of selection. So I could give you three names of watchmakers I would definitely keep an eye on in 2024, and then the special underground name that is actually starting to come out as we speak, because we are delivering now the first pieces. But anyway, on the lower tier, entry level affordable watchmaking, have a look at Ophion. Ophion, also based in Spain, as Andy was mentioning about the brand he mentioned before, based in Madrid. They make their watches between Switzerland and Germany. They collaborate as well with some of the very important case manufacturers that you mentioned, Comblemin, and then dial makers in Germany. Incredible value for what they are, and it feels like being a small Voutilainen in a way on your wrist, which is, I know, far-fetched, but I know Kari, and I know Kari is doesn't mind these kind of comparisons when there is a truth, behind. So
justification behind it, yes.
Yes. So Ophion on the entry tier. I would say Kudoke or Armstrong in the middle tier. Both Kudoke based in Germany, a true artisan of his trade, very passionate about engraving, one of the best engravers on movements and on watches. I don't know if you've ever seen a Kudoctopus by Kudoke. It's just it gives me butterflies every time. Andy, I can see you saying yes.
Yeah, I think you've seen the octopus, a very unique piece.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, the Kudoctopus. Yeah. And then Armstrong, they're very, very humble about their approach. Armstrong, starting from 2010, they started from nowhere, pursuing this philosophy of a fully in-house operations and becoming a global, somehow independent watchmaker. And they are now in a position where they have patented and created several inventions in the field of watchmaking, and they are always striving to propose it at interesting price points. So when we forget about marketing appeal of certain names of certain brands, Armstrong is one that may not have that appeal related to the name, if you like, but when you look into what they do at the price they propose, I think there's not a lot of competition out there. And then when we go to the higher tier, I know there is something crazy coming out on a brand is a big word, on a watchmaker called Alchemists. So Alchemists, they're coming out with the engineering development that is absolutely breathtaking. I have witnessed it before Christmas. I can't quite mention it yet because it's patent pending, and I know there's a lot of implications with that. But if you can stretch yourself over the 100,000, or simply you like, discovering what can be done in the world of watchmaking for the sake of learning, like myself, Alchemist is a name to keep in mind. For a surprise for this year, 2 years ago, there was a former F. Pigeon watchmaker who was dedicated to the new project developments of F. Pigeon. His name was Vladimir Negot. He left F. Pigeon. He started, congratulated by Francois Paul himself, his own venture. He's come out with his dual time that was fully sold out, 99 pieces 2 years ago, but we're only delivering now after some delays that obviously Vladimir faced as he's starting, if you like. And if you go on Instagram, everyone is talking about him like if it was a very, very new thing, and it is. And I think he's here to stay, because this is only the beginning of what I know is coming next. So Atelier Haute Complication is the brand, and the name of the watchmaker is Vladimir Negot.
Excellent. No, that's great insights. And yeah, I think all our listeners are going to be Googling like crazy now. We will be as well. So brilliant. Yeah, thank you for that.
Just for our listeners who didn't get all those, the first three were Ophion, which is the Spanish brand, Kudoke, and that Kudoctopus, which is absolutely stunning. And then Armstrong. I think that's a bit more of more familiar. People should be a bit more familiar with Armstrong. And then...
I was in those terms, it was about brands that are really solidly doing well at the moment.
Yeah. And then Alchemists, and then Atelier Haute Complication with the watchmaker Vladimir Negot.
Yeah, it's AHC, if you like, but we are the only retailer for AHC, so I may sound a bit biased, but there is a reason why we became retailers. Is because when I saw this, I completely believed in the project. For once, we got it quite right.
For once again, you mean?
Well,
yeah.
Fingers
crossed. We wish you really well with those brands and everything you do. We're going to have to end the show at that point. Thank you so much, Pietro.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space for listening to my many stories. And congratulations on what you do, because again, as I said, being passionate about watchmaking is not about buying watches, but it's all what comes before it, during and after it. So, and you're giving a great contribution with what you do.
Thank you.
Certainly means a lot to us. So absolute pleasure from my side. I'll do my classic sign off. So I've got to put the Instagram plug in there. So for all our listeners, we're going to put as many show notes as possible to all of the amazing references we've had today. So make sure
Andy's going to be busy now. This might revenge. Yeah. We need all those pictures in there, right?
Instagram, yeah. It might be a double post. So yeah, please
feel free to just get from our website. Don't
Thank
worry.
you. Yeah, I'll do that. Maybe it's going to be easy now. But yeah, please follow us if you haven't already at chrono_passion_7. And as always, Parm's probably happy from an editing perspective, but I'm going to stop talking now. So that is goodbye from me until the next show.
Yep. Thank you all so much again for listening. And we'll see you and you'll hear us in the next one.